Hey, Jane, I'm sorry, I've got to get on a Zoom call. I texted Tom and I've asked him to give me my sandwich in here and then give it to out there. He should be here in a minute. Thank you. No.
Hello, everyone. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So it is now 1 o'clock and we will start the presentation so that we can end on time. I know that everyone has such a very, very busy schedule. As you all have seen by now, I did hit the recording button. I know that we had a lot of participants in our first session and a lot of you here today, but we did get a special request to record these for anyone who is unable to be with us today. And at the close of this presentation, we will be uploading the videos so that you can go back and reference them if you need to. Before I introduce myself, I want to let everyone know that we do have 2 ASL interpreters with us today. One is Molly Landy and the other one is Brenda Rees. I hope I am pronouncing your last name correctly. If any of you are unable to see the interpreters, please put a quick a message in the chat and we'll make sure we correct that right away. So hello and thank you everyone for being here. Again, I know you all have very busy schedules. I completely understand that this is the start of a new semester. And with that brings its own challenges and responsibilities. So again, thank you. And a special thank you for those who may be joining us for the second time. We had a very robust crowd last week, who asked amazing questions. So we hope that this meeting is equally as interactive. We will have a question and answer session in the end. So I ask that you hold your questions during the presentation, jot them down, or you can put them in the chat and we will go back to the beginning of the chat at the close of the presentation and try to get through as many of those questions as we can. So for those of you that may not recognize me by now, my name is Chanel Whitaker, and I am the new Associate Vice Chancellor for Human Resources. I've been with the Los Rios District since March of this year, so not very long at all. But while a very short time, it has been a very amazing time and an ever-changing time, as all of you can imagine. When I started, the negotiations with the district and LRCFT were well underway, and I came in kind of on the tail end. But with that, I must say that I've had such a great working relationship with the LRCFT leadership, and I'm very grateful for that. So with that, I will let Belinda, my co-presenter, present herself, and then we will get started with the presentation.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday. I really appreciate that everyone has made an effort to come out and attend this particular workshop. I wanted to also let you know, as part of logistics, Robert Peroni, our executive director of the union, and Linda Sneed, who is one of our reps at CRC, may opt to answer some of the easier questions in the chat that might be more individualized or require more individualized attention. But we will go back in the chat that way so folks can have their needs met in the moment. As Chanel mentioned, I am the chief negotiator for the LRCFT. I also am a professor of sociology and I'm the campus president at SCC. And I have really appreciated the opportunity to work with Chanel as she has been really kind of forced to jump into the deep end, middle of a pandemic, middle of a vaccine mandate. I believe we had already closed negotiations, but also I believe at least 2 other collective bargaining units also that she had to jump into negotiations for with our partners at the LRCEA and LRSA. So I know it's not an easy task, but into the fire, as they say. So, but Chanel has come through, and we've really appreciated getting to know her and working with her. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chanel to get us kicked off. And let me actually get the screen. Oh, actually, I need you to provide me the power to share my screen, and then we can move forward.
Absolutely. 1 second.
And just for those, you'll see that for those of you who were here early, you've seen that I've multiple times uploaded the PDF slide deck for everyone to be able to follow along or take notes. If you're like me, anything to be able to write less and remember more is helpful. So I've put the PDF slide deck in there for everyone's review. Here we go. I'm hoping everyone can see the main slideshow. Is it good, Chanel?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so why are we all here today? As you all know at this point, as a result of the pandemic and all of the changes that occurred, the faculty evaluation was tweaked a little bit, and all evaluations were pushed forward a year. And so what that means is all tenured faculty and part-time faculty who were originally scheduled for their performance review during the fall 2020 semester will now be reviewed during the fall 2021 semester. All other tenured faculty and part-time faculty reviews will be pushed back by 1 year. So for example, any of those reviews that were to be scheduled in the fall of 2022 will now occur in the fall of 2023. So I would ask, everyone just make a note of when your performance review is, whether you're a faculty member or the reviewer, to make sure that we stay true to those timelines. And as per the Ed Code, there are certain groups that must go through the performance review process. And those groups are tenured track faculty, new part-time faculty, and long-term temporary, as we refer to as LTT, faculty with 12 to 6 month appointments. Thank you. And so even though the evaluation process itself was pushed forward a year, the actual timelines for the review has not changed. And you'll see here on the screen, these are all the same timelines that are referenced in the collective bargaining agreement.
There is your muted moment. I apologize. What I'm going to do is go through some of the sort of nuts and bolts of the review, because as many of you already know, the greater majority of our reviews for both classroom and non-classroom faculty will be done in an online environment. We have a very small percentage of our classes that are on ground. For those who are undergoing review on ground, you can follow the normal process of having, as long as you could have someone come to your classroom, view your teaching and write it up the way we normally would. For those who are doing asynchronous online classes, this will also run the way it normally does per the contract. And this is for those who have not seen this, it's outlined in Article 8.9 on page 100 of the collective bargaining agreement. For online courses, the workstation observations will include an opportunity for the assigned team reviewers to meet with the faculty member for a joint review of the course and separate workstation observations through a reviewer login of the course. I want to break down two things in this bullet. One is that there is a pre-meeting before the observer goes in to look at your Canvas shell. During this pre-meeting, it's important that the reviewee provides an overview of how they've organized the class, particular things that you would like them to know. For example, it may be that you break things down into a bunch of different modules. That this is how you get information out to your students. It could be via announcements, or it could be through some other portal in Canvas or an outside app. It is important to know that when you add someone into Canvas, and we were asked this during the last session, there in Canvas, when you add someone in, there is a reviewer and there's a reviewer legacy designation in there. You should add them in as a reviewer. The legacy one, as it implies, is an old version of it. So it is very specifically the reviewer role. The reviewer role is designed to give the faculty a very specific access so that they don't see the proverbial file cabinet that a lot of us keep in our Canvas shells. It shows you the student interactions, but also allows you to see small group work if it's organized that way. It's important to note that reviewers have 7 days to review a class and should focus on reviewing the course elements relevant to the agreed upon time frame. And that reviewer access provides a student view with the ability to enter different small groups. Sorry, I'm being redundant there. Now, we also know that there are a number of folks who are offering synchronous online classes. Their faculty member and their review team shall jointly determine review dates and the timing of workstation observations, which is the synchronous part. So it could be that, you know, the way that you've organized your class, that there's some interaction in the Canvas shell. And so therefore you would provide a reviewer access to your reviewers to let them go ahead and take a look at what you have organized in that Canvas shell. And then they could come to or attend one of your classes, which let's say it's a 1 p.m. class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They can attend on a date specific. It could be, let's say, October 12th at 1 o'clock, and you'll go to that session. It is important to note that it must be agreed upon. Reviewers, it's also important to note that reviewers may observe your live synchronous class and review components of your module related to your live class, similar to a face-to-face workstation, or they can follow the format used for the asynchronous review. Here, it's important for the teams to make the decision before the review occurs. Moving forward for library workstation reviews, one of the things I do want to note is that there may be newer technologies or newer programs that in particular non-classroom faculty may be using. Go ahead and include those as part of your discussion. We just tried to be as comprehensive as possible when we were soliciting the ways in which we could review the different non-classroom faculty online. So for library workstation reviews, this may include one or more of the following. The reviewer can sit in on a Zoom session. It can be, you can submit transcripts from chat stations. You could have recorded screencasts or copies of your research guides or recorded screencasts of your research guides, and submission of other materials that demonstrate the fulfillment of your professional obligations. Just as a reminder, everyone's professional obligations are written out in Article 8 of the contract. For counselor workstation reviews, for some of this, it is very important that you have permission of the students. But you may do the following. The reviewer can be present for the scheduled Skype, Zoom, or Cranium Cafe meeting. You can submit a recording of a meeting to your reviewer. It's important, again, that the recorded submissions be deleted after the review. Submit transcripts that demonstrate the fulfillment of your professional duties and obligations. So for some folks, it may be that you had an initial meeting and you did a lot of follow-up back and forth on email. You could submit those emails as a demonstration of the transcript of how you've been fulfilling your professional obligations. It's also important, particularly for counselors, not to submit any recordings or transcripts that contain confidential information. For coordinator workstation reviews, it may include one or more of the following. It can be reviewers sitting in on a live session or meeting. It can be a recorded screencast and/or tutorials. Submission of other materials that demonstrate the fulfillment of their professional obligations. So for example, this can include copies of grants, instructional videos, or transcripts of individual or group training sessions. I think in particular, what's important to note is that coordinator is a little bit of a catch-all for a lot of different types of jobs, everything from athletics through counseling. And that in fact, a lot of those who are like Puente coordinators or Moja coordinators, that a good portion of what they may be reviewed on are related to counseling guidelines. But it's important to note that you go through all of the professional obligations, and that the group, and this should be done as part of your pre-meeting, are very clear about the professional obligations that you are being evaluated under. I believe this is you.
Yes, thank you, Belinda. For those of you that have seen a copy of the performance evaluation form, you know that there is a box C that is on the form where the reviewers are responsible for identifying specific sources of evidence used to support the team's findings. And some of those sources can include the workstation observation, the student reviews of the faculty members' performance, the faculty members' self-study, or other additional information. And the corresponding recommendations for evaluations that are listed as unsatisfactory or needs improvement should cite very specific evidence that provides the person being reviewed with specific information to help facilitate any requested improvement. Next slide, Belinda. Thank you. So like I said at the very beginning, we know that no 2 days have been alike for any of us. And with the pandemic and the closures and some faculty having to move their classes online, we understand that this happened for a lot of the faculty for the very first time, a lot of faculty and administration alike, for reviewers and for reviewees. And so to help navigate this process, here are some of the things that we are recommending. You should make use of the pre-workstation review meetings to have a conversation about your approach to online teaching, to counseling, coordinating, or librarianship. During those meetings, that's a great time to ask questions that provide the reviewee a great opportunity to tell you how they meet different professional expectations. And for the reviewees, it's also a great time to explicitly discuss how you meet the regular and effective contact. For example, is it through announcements? Is it providing individualized feedback? Is it discussion in your asynchronous sessions? Is it the use of applications or other things that you're doing?
We also want to encourage flexibility. One thing that we came across last year is that there were some hiccups to the reviewer role. And it's important to note that the reviewer role in Canvas is imperfect. For example, last year, some reviewers were unable to see the student quiz that was being given during the workstation review time period, because again, you're logged in with a student view plus some enhancements. If you encounter a problem, please find a mutually agreed upon workaround if possible. If you're not sure if it's within the purview of the contract, you can email the union presidents and or your deans sooner rather than later. Actually, we prefer that it happens during the workstation review and that you don't wait weeks before reporting it forward, because it can really have a bad impact on reviews, right? And everybody being able to do their work relative to the review. So if you encounter problems like not being able to see something like a student quiz, there are some solutions that we came up with in real time last year that I'm sharing here that might be helpful for teams. You can request a PDF copy of the material you need. Just ask the professor, hey, tell them I'm not able to see the quiz. Any chance you can just shoot me a PDF with the questions on it? Others opted to have a really short Zoom meeting during the review period to view the necessary materials. They said I wasn't able to see the quiz and I wasn't able to see exercise X that you assigned. Can we just have a 10-minute Zoom where you just show it to me and I could take notes? Again, we're opting for flexibility here, and the more that you're able to find a mutually agreed upon solution between you and the reviewer, the better. Oops, did that go the right way?
Yes, it did. I can see it. Two main words that I've heard over and over since the start of my time here has really been grace and understanding. And like I said earlier, this process is very new for all of us, really. And so it is really important that not just the reviewer, but the reviewees show grace and understanding to each other. Online classes are not the same at all as they are to face-to-face classes. And the transition to this modality without the choice for a lot of individuals, we understand has been less than ideal, especially during the performance review process. Our goal is to always help focus faculty members on improving and growing if that's part of their review process, while also just acknowledging the work that all of our wonderful faculty members are doing, both in person and online. And in some cases, it's very important to note that there are some departments and some disciplines that are trailblazers, and that even though they are doing things for the first time, they're coming forth with very innovative ideas and practices and approaches. And it's all of our responsibility to help them evolve and improve without ever being overly punitive.
So I just provided contact information here. In particular, obviously you can email Chanel or I if you have very specific questions. For the faculty who are under review, or even for some of the reviewers, if you have questions, I've also listed the email contacts of all of the campus presidents. So you should contact your campus president if you have particular specific questions or concerns related to the performance review. I suspect that there may be some questions in the chat box. So what I can do is minimize this presentation, and we can just spend the rest of the time doing some Q&A for folks if there are questions. So.
Yes, and I see there were questions in the chat, and I think a lot of them have been answered. But for those that have not seen the chat, I'll go through them. The first question was, where can you find out the names and dates for when the peer review is due? And Linda Sneed responded, the deans maintain those lists.
I will tell you that the first major due date, unless you're teaching all first 8-week classes, is going to be October 1st, which is the last day of the final business day of the 6th week. So October 1st would be when your self-study and equity reflection are due. That's been sort of a main question we've been asked. And also theoretically, and I'm hoping you're here because you're already notified that you're either on a review team or you are a reviewer, or I also see a handful of deans as well, so.
Okay, the next question, can you confirm that new part-time adjunct faculty are not required to complete self-study and equity reflection for the first review? And Robert Peroni responded, they are not required to complete the self-study, but are required to complete the equity reflection.
Actually, I'm sorry, Robert. I checked that one with Jamie and I forgot to circle back. New part-time adjunct faculty are not required to do the equity reflection because they've only been here for 4 weeks.
Okay, but it's not in the contract doesn't specify that, but so we should probably.
I checked it with Jamie. I checked it with Jamie already, so we can correct it in the contract.
Okay.
And the last question that was in the chat, it says, for those of us who are teaching multiple online asynchronous courses, will all of our courses be reviewed, or will we agree on a single course for review?
It is a minimum of 3 of your courses will be reviewed per the contract. So basically three of them being reviewed would be the equivalent of 1 per reviewer. So each of your reviewers should review a different asynchronous class. And I'm assuming, I'm sorry, I'm also working on the assumption that that's a question from a full-timer. Yes, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, the person says no, it's part-timer. And can you say that again, please, Belinda?
Oh, so for full-timers, it is a minimum of 3. It's a minimum of 3 different classes for full-timers must be reviewed. For the part-timers, usually, I mean, the standard practice or past practice has been that each reviewer, which would presumably be when you're one faculty member on the committee and the dean would each review a different class. That's been past practice. But I would ask your dean that question.
There's a clarifying question. It says, so if you have one reviewer, will only one class be reviewed?
There's always two reviewers. So for part-time faculty, it's always the dean plus a faculty member. So there's always two reviewers minimum on that one. So
Is there a policy about part-time in one or more classes?
Robert, I'm going to let you answer that particular question. I think Robert's typing his answer there.
Robert said, no, there is no restriction on the number of classes to be reviewed. And then the next question, how do student surveys work?
So there is an online platform that was adopted, I guess about 2 years ago, year and a half ago. There is a default date, which you should be emailed about. As a faculty member, you do have the right to ask that student review week be moved if it, for example, lands in the middle of midterm. So for example, when I taught a second 8-week class, inevitably the review ended up during week 4, which is when I give a midterm. And as instructors, we know our favorite time to be reviewed is when we're given a midterm. But you do have the right to ask for it to be removed. But basically what happens is in the Canvas shell, it launches a pop-up window that the students are asked to click on until they finish the review. And then they are up for 7 days, and then should be, and then the aggregate is sent as a PDF to your dean, who can distribute it to the rest of your committee and to you, because you own your student reviews at the end, and they will be, those files should be deleted after your review and only remain with you. But it should be noted, it is one of those pop-up windows that literally won't go away until the student fulfills it. So it will annoy them for 7 days unless they finish it on day 1.
Okay, the next question. My understanding is that preference rights at LRCC comes after a certain amount of time of teaching as an adjunct, and reviews are not part of this review process. Is that correct?
I would say yes and no, in that their preference may come after time, but I do believe that there is a clause in there, and I'd have to go back and look at it, that indicates to maintain preference, you have to be, that it depends, that you have to have satisfactory reviews. And I see Linda and Robert both typing, so both of them are, I don't have my contract fully available on that one, but I'm going to let them add to that answer. So it's a little bit of a both and.
Robert says, see Appendix F. And the second, there's another question. Is there a list of questions as in the past to address self-study?
Oh, yeah. So Appendix E and F, Appendix E for full-timers and Appendix F for part-timers. We'll show you the self-study rubric or format. The LRCFT is also running workshops on how to write a self-study. We ran one last week. We have one at the end of week 5, which I believe is September 24th. And also the part-time faculty, Oranit and Linda are running one for part-time faculty, I believe tomorrow, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. I'll let them type it into the box. But we also have a special peer review process for part-timers. We are recording all of them, and we are going to, as soon as we have them uploaded, we will have it distributed. The link distributed to everybody.
Can I just pop in one thing too? Hi, everybody. This is Linda. Ornita and I are running this workshop tomorrow, which you should have received a couple of emails about. And we're going to repeat it next week. We haven't determined the day and time yet, but we'll be announcing that very soon. So for anybody who would actually like that live opportunity, it'll be tomorrow, but then repeated on a different day and time the following week.
I think I saw, should our full-time faculty reviewing more than one class? The answer to that should be no, you should be only doing one workstation review per faculty. I think Jeanette asked that question in there, and then it scrolled away from me.
Are full-time faculty required to do student reviews?
In this environment, I would tell you, I was gonna say yes, it has to happen as part of your review. I do know that typically a lot of us who do reviews are also asked to bring them in with us. So if you are doing a face-to-face, I need to double check that you're not bringing, I believe that you may be handing in the physical review papers, but all others for online classes will be done via the evaluation toolkit, which already exists in Canvas. So you as a full-time reviewer would not have to do anything, but it is, the student reviews are a required part of the review process. And if you read the contract, is that it should be used only, it's not used in and of itself as a standalone, but it would be used as a way to kind of reaffirm themes that you may be seeing or viewing throughout the performance review.
When do part-time faculty get notified that they will be reviewed?
You should have been notified already by your dean, but if you have not, I would suggest emailing your dean and asking when your scheduled review is occurring.
I have my first meeting in a few days, and I am just worried I'm not preparing for it enough. It seems to be a meeting to schedule another later meeting. Do we all go through this two-step meeting process with our review team?
Yes, so there's a pre-meeting, which oftentimes is just used to set up logistics, where you sit down with the committee, the dean reviews particular dates of when things are happening, everything from the student reviews will be launched on this date, who will be reviewing which class, and the window in which we should be scheduling this review team. So for example, if I was reviewing Chanel, the dean would say, so Belinda, you can do your workstation review of Chanel between week 6 and week 14. Make sure that you pick a mutually agreed upon date that you can attend. So, or in this case, if it's online, make sure that you clearly communicate the 1 week module that you will be in the course shell.
Linda Sneed has her hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Chanel, I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but in my experience as a part-time faculty member, the pre-meeting has not always happened. In fact, I don't think it ever happened until this semester, and I've been teaching in Liz Rose since 2003 continuously. I just wondered, Janelle, if you know this to be, if deans have been encouraged to schedule pre-meetings with all faculty being reviewed, including part-time faculty, or if some deans are prioritizing that and others aren't. I personally kind of welcomed it. I thought, oh, great, a little kind of check-in, and it seemed to just make the process more transparent and clear about, okay, what are we doing here, and what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But I think for people who've been around a while, they may never, part-time faculty, they may not have had a pre-review conference, so this may feel new, and it may be kind of worrying people, like, what's going on? Why am I required to do more meetings?
Mhm.
Is someone like breathing down my neck in a way they weren't before, or am I in trouble, or something like that?
Well, I can say that this particular topic has not come up since I have been here. But again, that's only been since March, but I'm happy to ask those that were here in my role before me and follow up.
I was also going to say that as someone who's had 4 deans in 6 years, I've had different versions of the same meeting. I've had the equivalent of everybody in the division getting reviewed and all the reviewers all in one room version, where they say, okay, here are the steps, blah, 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 etc. I've had each individual team meeting, and then I guess later on today, I may be experiencing more of everybody in your department who's being reviewed. So I've seen different versions of the pre-meeting. So there definitely is also not necessarily consistency in how it's run by each dean. So, and that's a whole sample size of 1. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's done other places, but I imagine other faculty have experienced that as well.
Okay, I'll go back to the chat. For full-time review, if there are asynchronous meetings, do the reviewers attend the synchronous session?
Your choice. You should sit down with the reviewee and make a decision of what you prefer. So in some way, I mean, in some ways, I think that like anecdotally, I would tell you that a lot of reviewers I know have opted to go to the synchronous side because, and then follow what they believe has been the sort of normal practice of how they did synchronous reviews. But again, it's up to the team to mutually agree upon that.
Is there a web link to the performance review forms?
We can, yeah, I think there is. Linda?
I was just gonna say, I have the contract open online. If you want me to screen share, I could just very quickly show people how to get there.
Yeah, that would work really quickly. Is that okay, Chanel?
Yes, absolutely.
I think it allows for multiple shares right now.
Okay, so let me, okay, I'm gonna go back. So the web address for LRCFT is very simple. It's just lrcft.org. So I'll show you, if you go to the LRCFT homepage, this is what you'll see. Oh, I think I have my font might be a little bigger, but I think everything displays here. There's some more information down here, but if you're just wanting to get to the contract, if you go under for members, very first link is contract, click on contract. And here you have all kinds of useful stuff. You can download the 21-23 contract as a PDF. These are recent MOUs, memoranda of understanding that have been signed between management and the LRCFT through negotiations outside of this contract that was completed in the last semester. No, sorry, not last semester, almost a year ago, fall 2020. And then this is really helpful. You can click directly on any of the articles of our contract. So Article 8 is performance review. If you want to see all of the language that's been negotiated about performance review, you click here. Over here on the right, you have all of the forms in the appendix. And that includes, so self-study instructions for full-time faculty is here, and the equity reflection, which is universal for everyone. The self-study instructions for part-time faculty is here. It's a little different from full-time. So if you're part-time, you definitely want to pay attention to the self-study guide that's specifically for part-time faculty. And the major difference, I apologize if you already went over this. I had a little cat mishap that I need to leave the screen for a minute, but the you don't want details, believe me. There are some things that, as you probably know, part-time faculty are not required to do. So we're not paid for college service, for example. So there's no place, we're not expected to comment on like our service. And then up here are all the forms that are contained in Appendix C within our contract. Our contract is big, but this makes it a lot easier to be able to hone in on what the area that you're interested in. And if you're having any trouble navigating the contract, you can always reach out to any of us for help on that.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate it. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking at Camille's question here. I'm trying to make sure I understand it. Some amount of time to, let's see, let's see. The faculty serve on peer review teams for colleagues teaching in person. We observe their classes for approximately 7 minutes and devote 10 minutes to collecting student reviews. Should faculty devote a similar amount of time to reviewing our colleagues' Canvas courses during the agreed upon time period for asynchronous online teaching? You know, the contract is silent on that, and so, and oftentimes reading material, reviewing material may take people different amounts of time. So I don't really feel comfortable allocating time. The 7-day time period that was put in there for logistical reasons, in that we know that people's schedules are busy, being able to sit down and take the time to review modules and the recordings. The readings that are assigned are going to look a little different for everybody. So I don't necessarily feel comfortable giving a time period, but I would say that the 7-day work review period was more about logistics. And also you may have deans that, for example, that are reviewing 20 people in 1 week. And so if you have this 7-day window, how are they supposed to really get everything done? So the 7 days was more of a logistical consideration when we negotiated this 6 years ago. I think it was my first time I was on negotiating team, so it was 6 years ago when we dealt with it. So I would tell you to use your best judgment. I would also tell you, going back to what Chanel said about kind of grace and understanding, is that really the guidance here would be not to cherry pick, for lack of a better way of putting it, as opposed to providing constructive feedback that helps someone improve their craft of teaching, if improvement's needed, because some people may not need improvement. Let's see. I think we've covered, did we skip any questions that are necessary? Can we schedule this review before we turn in our self-study? I believe the answer to that is that yes or no, Robert?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that the only restrictions on the review, right, is that it can't happen after week 15, if I remember right. That's the only thing the contract says, right?
Right. I mean, it's got to start before week 15, way before week 15.
Yeah, but I was just like following the timeline. So, so for example, we know right now that there are a lot of folks who are doing first 8-week classes, and so they are making adjustments to the time schedule. So the contract does allow for adjustments to the time schedule if you're teaching only first week or only second 8-week classes, so that it's adjusted to fit those needs. We've also received inquiries regarding what to do if someone is scheduled to go out on family leave or parental leave before the end of the semester. What we've suggested is that if it's possible to try to complete the entire review before they leave, because once they are on a medical leave like family leave or parental leave, it just wouldn't be fair to have them come back after having a newborn. So we're suggesting that to the extent possible, and if it's mutually agreed upon, that occur. Now, if something else needs to happen, I encourage you to contact your union president, who could sit down with you and your dean to figure out, do we need to make some sort of adjustment, like moving the review till spring or something else? So those types of cases are dealt with on an individual case-by-case basis by the administration and the union in consultation with the reviewee. Do we need to activate any navigation panels on campus? My understanding that my understanding is that you do not need to do anything, and it should just automatically appear in the portal for the students. I've not heard differently at this point. So, but we can circle back, or if not, it might be faster if you just ask your dean. But my understanding is that the entire process is automated. Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the timing of the student reviews, I know that they created a default mechanism for when they occur. And as just to remind you, you have the right to ask that it gets removed. And it should be a 7-day period in which you do your student evaluations. Any last questions?
Yeah, so Belinda, it was at the last event, and I think someone asked about the legacy reviewer. Did you find out what that refers to?
Yes.
Thank you.
So everyone should be using the reviewer role when you add, if you are a reviewee who's adding someone into your Canvas shell, you should use the reviewer role. The reviewer legacy was an old format that actually had a lot of problems with it, but they couldn't delete it it's a hiccup in Canvas. So they named it reviewer legacy although I guess we probably should just label it as reviewer do not use or something like that. But use the reviewer role when you are adding reviewers into your Canvas shell. The other, that also triggers another question that we had last time, which is, so at the end of 7 days, does the person automatically get removed? No, you actually, as a reviewee, will be removing people from your Canvas shell, just like you would a student. So my recommendation on that is, before you just delete them, let them know, I know it's the end of our 7-day period. I plan to remove you from my core shell. Are we good? Just come to affirm that they've finished everything that they needed to do. But you will also have to manually remove the person from your core shell. I saw like a bunch of questions go up here. So Catherine's question was, how do we know when those 7 days are for the student review? Or for the student review, it should be emailed to you that the student reviews are happening between date X and date Y. You should be notified by your dean before those, at least a week, if not sooner, before it's launched. In fact, I think some folks have already been getting emails because we had some question about time periods, whether it was 7 or 14 days. It's 7 days, at least per how we wrote up the agreement. So every dean is going to deal with that differently, but you should ask, if it hasn't been announced, ask during your pre-meeting, or if you've already had your pre-meeting, just follow up with an email asking what your dates for review are so you could cross-check it with your own syllabus.
Belinda, can you, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ornette.
Can you also, elaborate on, this is an issue that has been brought to my, attention in terms of reviewers, looking at a Canvas shell and talking about every single thing, not just that particular 7 days or the week of, review observations and so forth, so on. Is that something that someone should do?
So the spirit of how we did online reviews is that you should be reviewed the same way you would for a synchronous class. And so if you think about it, for faculty who are going to a synchronous class, you are unaware of like what announcements were made before, how often someone reminds students to do their homework, or, fill out, survey X or whatever it might be. So the idea is that they should be somewhat parallel in process, because we know that they're, on the one hand, they're different, but they're supposed to be somewhat parallel. So in that regard, when you go in under the student role, under the student view, you will see anything that is published. That could be old announcements, things that you may not have context for, but the spirit of this review should be that you are there to review things that are happening during that 7-day observation period. Unless for some reason, there may be some things that, obviously you could say, well, it's clear that, it's really clear that Chanel makes numerous announcements to her students. I mean, there are those kind of things, but we have seen, and I think Ornette and I have both been in our position long enough to know that we've also seen people nitpick things outside of the workstation review that actually had nothing to do with the module under review. So it really, in good faith, should be, right, that 7-day review period. Without, like trying to find mistakes. And I think this goes back to Chanel's point about grace and understanding as well. Clay, to answer your question, you must add them. You must add the folks into your review. So you'll want to know when is the first day to be reviewed. And so you would add them on that day. And when you add them in by the WID number, it'll ask you to the right side, there's a little thing that says roll, and you would click on that and then click reviewer and hit add, and then they have to accept. But they will have 7 days from the point where you add them. And you would also, going into the people tab, you can also click on their name at the end of the 7 days and basically remove them from your course as well. Sorry, my contacts are all nice and dry, but trying to make sure I'm seeing everything here. So the 7 days are specific to whatever is happening in your class during those 7 days. Yes, Molly, the specific to the 7 days that you are in class, although I would also note that Normally, as a courtesy, we also, of course, give copies of our syllabus to make sure we're in alignment with the approved syllabi and those kind of things. So really, when we're talking about it from a teaching demo standpoint or a review of your workstation, it is about how do you execute your class or your module. But there may be elements of it that stretch, that are more holistic to class. Like how are we clear about how we are reaching the student learning outcomes? There's a few other things in there that are a little bit more holistic in nature that we may look at our syllabi for. Which is another thing I want to bring up, is that for those folks who are newly trained on a lot of the foundations of Canvas or OEI, I know that in all of those courses, they advocate, I'm going to use that word, that you don't have a syllabus and that you just use pages. For both contract reasons and accreditation reasons, you must have a document that's titled syllabus. So what I recommend is that you cut and paste that information into a document that you're calling syllabus and you submit that. But it is actually two different things. It is two different things that you need to make sure you turn syllabi in for. One is meeting our professional obligations from a contractual standpoint. And then the bigger picture is us being accredited at our respective colleges, because in talking to the deans of research, it is one of the areas that they do measure our effectiveness on.
Belinda, can I bring up another question? I think you answered everything already, but in the chat.
Okay.
So thank you. So I think one interesting question that I was asked is, since the equity reflection is not supposed to be used in rating or the performance, right? The question that was asked was, in that case, sometimes people would write a narrative in giving feedback, on the other side of the formal official form. And so I was asked, how about if someone wants to write something nice about the equity reflection? Because again, if someone can write something nice about the equity reflection, someone can also write something that's not very nice or very critical of the equity reflection. So what is your response to that?
Well, I mean, as chief negotiator, I would tell you that, that equity reflection was a mutually agreed upon document that we came to over what I would say is a very tense set of negotiations. This is the part that folks don't see, that we had some fundamental differences with our administrative counterparts over how you improve equity. And so I think for those who like the equity reflection process, I would invite that as feedback. And I think that we're clear, just like equity itself, right? We're going to have people on multiple sides of the coin there. And so I think for me, I would tell you that it's a pilot program. And if there are other questions we should be asking, ways that we can improve it, great. The union, and I said this before we went into negotiation, is against performance-based evaluations where we would be judged based off our student success numbers. And we, we stuck by that interest. I don't think I'm gonna make anyone mad at district for saying that. I think it's pretty straight up. But we feel that it was, as a union, and we've heard this for as many people as we've heard who don't like the equity reflection. We have others who've said we need to do more. And so for us, this was the middle ground where we are talking about it and being able to reflect on it. So now that being said, if I'm kind of understanding your question, is that it is a forum in which we could talk about equity. But I also want to note that it's not a free pass, get out of jail free is the framing I'm going to work, that just because you wrote in your equity reflection doesn't mean that there aren't things that have happened in the performance of your professional duties that may come up that may be equity adjacent or correlated to equity that may end up hitting on some part of your review. Let's say, I don't know, hypothetically, you sent out really nasty emails to your entire department, right? Though, we know that our work emails are not owned by us. And if it went public, those sentiments, right, may be something that can come up as a suggestion for how one communicates in one's department. So it's sort of this weird gray area, but it's important that we note that whatever recommendations we make or needs improvements made are documented in facts. And like I said, in the equity reflection is sort of one of those, we're trying something new. And so if you like it, we'd love to hear about it, but also if you think there's also positive things that you've done as a faculty member that you believe have contributed to equity, you can use that in your review. In the self-study workshop, we encourage you to think about the equity reflection as that you can use. Maybe you found the right way to finally discuss the equity interventions you've been doing in your class. You can totally repeat yourself in the self-study if you want that to be known to your committee. And I might have just totally answered the wrong question, Ornette, so please correct me.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood the question. Let me, sorry. So basically the question was, because the equity reflection is not supposed to be used as part of the performance review rating, can the team, can the reviewers write something nice that is taken from the commendation, from the equity reflection? That's a question. Because the person asking the question was concerned that it's not supposed to be used in any way. So if you can write commendation based on the equity reflection, then you can also write, critical comments or recommendations based on the equity reflection. So the question was, should the reviewers write commendation based on the equity reflection?
Got it. I would tell you that every part of the equity reflection should remain outside of that, but Robert may have a different read. But I would say that if it's something you get a commendation on, put it into your self-study, please. I mean, I'm just, if it's something that you do well, put it into your self-study under how you stay current in the field. So there's no rule that says you can't use things from your equity reflection if you, as the reviewee, decide, hey, I'm doing some really good stuff here. I'm also going to put in my self-study. Great. If you're not doing anything, you may not want to mention anything at all. But I'm just saying that if it's something that would fall under commendation, I certainly would consider putting it under as bullet points or as ways that you stay current in the field. I see another. Is there another question? I see Linda's hands up.
I just want to, kind of piggyback on what Ornita asked. I was understanding her question as a question about what reviewers can and can't do, should or shouldn't do. And I had asked earlier, I don't know if you saw my question and if you answered it, I completely spaced it. I had asked whether there's any special training that performance reviewers, peer reviewers are receiving. So will all faculty who are serving as peer reviewers know very, unequivocally what they can and can't comment on? Like if they didn't attend these workshops, will they get that information in ways that will increase our confidence? They know exactly what
I think that
they should be doing.
My hope is that this should be covered in your pre-meeting, but this is also points to, I believe James Tells and I had a similar conversation of, okay, at some point we probably do need to add this to LRCFT repertoire of workshops that we haven't got to, but my understanding is that, and maybe Chanel, you and I can work on a joint communication in this regard with links to this presentation. I think that could also be an intermediate step since we're literally right upon the review. So maybe we can think of an intermediate step because we have to send out this, what do you call it? This recording anyways.
Hi, everybody. Belinda, I have a question. I'm wondering, you mentioned that feedback on the equity reflection should be outside the process. I'm wondering if there are any parameters or things we need to worry about in terms of giving feedback to our reviewees that is not, official commendations or official areas of suggestions for improvement.
So I think what I would say is that anything that you write on the form that says recommendation on it has to be treated very formally, and you absolutely have to give documented evidence of that backs up your recommendation. Because if you look at the format in your next review, you have to respond to it officially. The informal part has been done in a number of ways. Historically, it was conversational. Some folks have had a separate sheet of paper that they've provided, but I want to be clear, and it should be clear, and this can be something we follow up on, is that these types of suggestions are not, the person under review is under no obligation to respond to it. So when we talk about that informal piece, that's where I think about it as collegiality, about conversations, about which I think that a lot of us have had that opportunity with some of our reviewers to have a conversation and talk about different approaches or what you saw that didn't come up in the review. But from a contractual standpoint, we're probably most concerned that anything that gets written in that recommendation box, even if it's seemingly positive, is something that someone has to respond to. For example, Ornate is really wonderful, Ornate is really wonderful with her engagement with students. Keep it up. And it's in the recommendation box. So Ornate in her next review has to write, I'm keeping it up, right? I'm keeping it up and engaging students, right? So she has to respond to the recommendations. I know it's a weird example, and it's meant to be congratulatory and, and really and affirming, right? And I think it's important for us to have those moments of affirmation, but if you put it in that recommendation box, Ornate on her next evaluation 3 years from now must say, I will keep it up. And I kept it up, and I was engaging students. And so that's what I would tell you. I think it sounded like Victoire. Was that you? I think that was what I would tell you, is that the informal piece, I would think about it as a conversation of how you want to engage your colleague. But anything formal in terms of recommendations, it has to be backed up by evidence. So I'm not sure that, did I kind of get at the crux of your question there, Victoire? Oops, I think I might have lost her.
Yes, you did. Thank you. That was very helpful. I was having trouble getting back to unmute my microphone. But yes, you covered that beautifully. That is what I thought, but I also kind of thought maybe to give that feedback was frowned upon. So you're making me know that, yeah, you can give that informally. And like you said, the person is under no obligation to do anything. It's just a suggestion or just information, but nobody's going to run back and go, dear Union, Victoire told me that she thought I should read this book, and I think that's horrible. And, she should have said that formally in my process. So, not that I'm having it, that's hypothetical, not that I'm having any problems, but I just wanted to know for sure. It put me at ease. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I also think that sometimes it's better to do those as I guess as before pandemic, I would have told you it's a good excuse to go have a coffee with a colleague and just to chat them up. But if not, maybe a virtual coffee so that it's clearly outside of peer review. I know we have probably time for one more question. Chanel, am I right on that one?
It's actually 2:02, but if you want to take one more question, we can take that and then we can close it out.
Yeah, why don't we just take one more question?
Sure.
Linda.
Well, it's not a question. It's something I just started putting in the chat. So I don't want to usurp the position of an actual question.
Is there any last pressing question? I do, while I fill space in case someone has that last pressing question, I do want to amplify a few things. Number one is the part-timer training that Linda and Ornate are doing tomorrow. That the LRCFT is also doing a training on how to write your self-study on the Friday, I believe it's Friday the 24th or Friday the 25th, whichever day is the Friday. And we will be sending out, as soon as we have everything uploaded, we will be sending out links. And the presidents have all already emailed you with links to the equity reflection training as well, and the supplemental info. It probably came out about a week and a half ago, but what we will do is make sure that as we update the links to the trainings that we'll get it onto our webpage as well. Great. Well,
Okay, with that, I'd like to say thank you again to everyone for joining us. This has been another great session with wonderful questions. I apologize for my technical difficulties a little bit earlier, but I joined back as soon as I could get my computer up and running. So thank you so much, and we will have both of our sessions up online very soon.
great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly and Brenda. I'm sorry, I should have thanked you both publicly. It's like, we're good. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.